they fired those rockets and missiles after they placed them in schools, in hospitals, in apartment buildings, and in the private homes of the citizens of Lebanon. They endanger their own people. They put a missile in every kitchen, a rocket in every garage. I said to the people of Lebanon this week, get out of the death trap that Hezbollah has put you in.
Yes, Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations today, addressing the United Nations General Assembly, which we like to call the UNGA. It's the UNGA. I don't like to call it that, but that's what they call it, the UNGA. And now, Led Zeppelin. I've got lots of crazy news for you. President Trump met today with Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, of Kiev, Ukraine. And Joe Biden ponied up another $8 billion yesterday to keep the war going. Got to keep that war going. And there's a lot of crazy. Got war in the Middle East, never ending. And do we have Secretary of State? I think we have it. We pay a guy to do that job. He flies around on these airplanes that out of Andrews, and they're big with the Air Force One paint job on these 757s. But I don't see anything getting done. I don't see any news reports of peace talks going on involving the radical Islamic jihadis, whom the Democrats favor, and the Israelis, who represent civilization. The jihadis represent the end of civilization, the death of civilization. And so does the left, and the left has taken over the Democrat Party. Amazing stuff. But then there's the much larger war. You know, you got college kids and other Democrats all over America smashing windows and banging drums and wearing terrorist headdresses and supporting, chanting from the river to the sea, wipe Israel off the face of the earth, because the Democrats are raising, what is it? It should be Gen. It should be Gen. Generation genocide. What do you think? I like it. It just occurred to me right now. Gen. Forget about that Gen Z and all that stuff. That'd be the last generation, Gen Z, wouldn't it? The end of everything. But Gen, the generation genocide that the Democrat Party is raising. And this is our educational system as well. But they say, there are 40,000 dead in Gaza, which, is a big place, twice as big as Washington, D.C. It's their home state. It's a two-state solution. Unfortunately, one state is a terror state. It's Gaza, and it's run by a genocidal terrorist group called Hamas. And they got 40,000 dead, and they stopped the genocide. But they don't give a flying hoot about the much, much larger war between Ukraine and Russia. We just keep shoveling money and arms at it, and that's just fine. No problem there. Of course, we're kind of funding. We're funding really by various means both sides of the Russia-Ukraine war because of our mishandling under the Biden-Harris administration of energy and oil, and helping Russia out with policies that put tens of billions into Vladimir Putin's coffers so he can continue to fund the war against Ukraine. And then we more directly fund Ukraine to keep the war going against Russia, right? Whereas Joe Biden, what he gave $6 billion to Iran in exchange for 5 hostages, I think you can expect more hostages. And in fact, there are American hostages still being held by Hamas, and nobody talking about that. How many? We think 8. Are they dead? Are they being tortured and raped every day? The Biden-Harris administration don't give a hoot. They could care less, because I know this because they never say anything about it, and they haven't done anything about it, and they don't lift a finger to end the war or to get our hostages back. But we fund Israel on the one hand, we fund Iran on the other hand, and again, with the oil prices, we help Iran to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. Barack Obama very directly helped Iran with tens of billions of dollars so they could fund the Houthis in Yemen, who just fired a ballistic missile into Tel Aviv today, help Hezbollah in Lebanon, help Hamas in the Gaza, the Islamic Jihad, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and on and on. And young Democrats on college campuses are being brainwashed by the fascists to call for Israel to be wiped out from the river to the sea. They don't know what river or what sea, but they know they want genocide of Jews. It's pretty remarkable stuff. And we're the bad guy. I've got to say, we're the bad guy all over the place here. We're not the good guy. And Joe Biden, where are the peace talks? Where are the peace talks for the Ukraine and Russia war? Here's the Wall Street Journal 1 week ago. 1 million are now dead or injured in the Russia-Ukraine war. That's the headline. 1 million are now dead or injured. Newsweek magazine yesterday. Russia lost nearly 10,000 troops in just 1 week. Just 1 week. And there are no protests on college campuses. There are no angry college professors who are Soviet, Bolshevik, leftist, commies. But, the commies, they murder everybody. Out of Wuhan, the Chinese communists were playing with germs and germ warfare. And the reports are that 7 or 8 million people died from the Wuhan Red Death. We have our Wuhan Red Death coffee mugs and T-shirts at the Chris Plant store on Al Gore's Amazing Internet. And I survived the Wuhan Red Death twice. I've got an update on that, too. But nobody's calling for peace between Russia and Ukraine. The administration has not a peep, and another $8 billion just yesterday for Ukraine to continue the war. And we're not doing anything about driving energy prices down. That would hurt Putin and Russia, but never mind that. And a really bizarre story that popped today. General Stanley McChrystal, widely regarded as an American military hero, was the general in charge of the war in Afghanistan, in charge of U.S. and NATO troops in Afghanistan for a long time. And now General Stanley McChrystal, I can't even believe this is real, but it is, the former commander of U.S. and NATO forces, Newsmax TV reporting, and the Newsmax Online. General Stanley McChrystal, the former commander of U.S. and NATO forces in Afghanistan, endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris for president in an opinion piece published in the New York Times. McChrystal became well known for his time leading American forces overseas and for submitting his resignation in 2010 to then President Barack Hussein Obama after he made disparaging remarks about then Vice President Joe Biden and other administration officials in an interview with Rolling Stone magazine. General McChrystal made the disparaging remarks, right? And then he was kind of forced out, had to resign. In his opinion piece in the New York Times, the four-star general said he's backing Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential race because he's voting not for policy positions, but for character. And he doesn't like Donald Trump. So he can't vote for Donald Trump. And, there's a lot of this going on in the country, actually, people not voting so much for Kamala Harris, but voting against, did I say Kamala? One hump or two. And I don't know, let's call Willie Brown. And there are a lot of people who are voting against Trump rather than voting for Kamala Harris because, the propaganda machine and President Trump also often does himself no favors. But I talked about the things that he says. But I talked about this a couple of weeks ago now, I think. The old saying, which is traceable to various American political leaders going back to World War II and going up to Gene Kirkpatrick, the Ronald Reagan United Nations ambassador. The old line is, he's a son of a bitch, talking about dictators overseas that were supported by the U.S. because otherwise the country would roll over to the Soviet Union, who are trying to take over the world and enslave the entire population of the planet Earth. But the old saying is, he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch, right? And the worst case scenario with Donald Trump is he's going to say things that he shouldn't say from time to time, mean tweets, it's about the mean tweets. But he's on our side. Kamala Harris is not on our side. Joe Biden's not on our side. He used to be, I think, but he doesn't know enough anymore. Kamala Harris is definitely not on our side. And I would say to General Stanley McChrystal, who I think disgraces himself with this piece in the New York Times, but the opinion piece by McChrystal, Why Kamala Harris Has Won Me Over, is the headline in the New York Times. And General McChrystal, I honestly believe, embarrasses himself. And he's a guy with a heck of a record, 4-star Army general, and romp and stomp and life taken. But apparently Donald Trump has so aggravated General McChrystal, 4-star Army former, that he just can't bring himself to vote for Trump. And if that's true, General Stanley McChrystal, okay, but the New York Times to come out in support of Kamala Harris, honestly, that is a bridge too far by a long shot. By a long shot. And again, the war machine, but I've got to say, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Robert Duvall in the movie Apocalypse Now, when they're flying in the helicopter assault team and lighting up the village, Charlie Don't Surf. And I'm thinking maybe Stanley McChrystal just, wants the never-ending war to go on, and the Democrats are better at that.
You smell that? Napalm, son. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. The smell. That gasoline smell. It smells like victory. Someday this war's going to end.
Shaking his head. Someday this war is going to end, he says. Colonel Kilgore in Apocalypse Now, great movie, great scene, great actor, who lives outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia on a farm, actually, Robert Duvall. One of the great actors of his generation, no doubt about it. And I'm just wondering if General Stanley McChrystal hasn't become General Kilgore. Someday this war is going to end. And you might think that because President Trump today met in New York with none other than the president of war-torn Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. And President Trump is talking about what? He's the only one talking about it, actually, about ending the war between Russia and Ukraine.
So we have a very good relationship, and I also have a very good relationship, as you know, with President Putin. And I think if we win, I think we're going to get it resolved very quickly. I really think we're going to get it resolved.
I hope we have more good relations.
We're going to have. Oh, I see. Yeah, but it takes two to tango, and we will. We're going to have a good meeting today.
We're going to have a good meeting today, and I'm going to bring the war to an end. And Volodymyr Zelensky is thinking, I wonder if I have enough money now. I funnel millions to the Biden family and now have hundreds of billions from the U.S. taxpayer to fund the never-ending war and to buy boats and airplanes and houses on the beach, on the water. Because very good, very good. Yes, sir. But President Trump's talking about bringing an end to the war. The Democrats are not talking about bringing an end to the war. They're talking about funding the never-ending war, the military-industrial complex, and I fear that that General Stanley McChrystal may have become General Kilgore, and he's lamenting the notion that someday this war is going to end. Perhaps. There it is. Did you know that left untreated AFib, atrial fibrillation, can increase your risk of stroke and of heart failure? AFib, of course, runs in families. It can be genetic. So if anyone in your family in the past has had trouble with heart issues and heart attacks and strokes, well, you may have a higher chance of developing these issues too. That's why you should check out the KardioMobile Personal EKG by AliveCor. It's FDI cleared to detect atrial fibrillation, AFib. It's a pocket-sized EKG, and it's a device that gives you 6 views of your heart, 6 views. Incredibly easy to use. I've got one at home. You can take a medical-grade EKG right from your smartphone in just 30 seconds and easily share the very accurate EKG data with your doctor, with the hospital, with your loving spouse. This month is AFib Awareness Month, which is a good awareness month. So it's the perfect time to manage your heart health. Longevity is good. For a limited time, KardioMobile is giving 20% off to all of my listeners because you hang with me. 20% off. All you have to do is go to Kardia.com. That's Kardia, as any school child can tell you, Kardia.com. Or you can go to Amazon and you use the code 20PLANT, 20PLANT. That is 20PLANTE to get your 20% off the Cardia Mobile 6L device. Sponsored by AliveCore Inc. Yeah, so Russia lost nearly 10,000 troops in 1 week. The Wall Street Journal reports 1 million casualties. That means killed and wounded in the Ukraine-Russia war. Nobody with peace talks going on. It doesn't look like Volodymyr Zelensky wants anything other than billions more to keep the war going. President Trump is talking peace. That could be more trouble for him. All right, Michael, let us attack our telephones. I, too, love the smell of napalm in the morning. Someday this war is going to end. Not with the Democrats in charge, though. Let's go to Richard calling from Manassas, Virginia. Ricardo, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Grazie. So, we got Lloyd Austin talking about permanent ceasefire, which has another name. It's called capitulation, in Israel. And it's really disappointing. Here's a general, talking about ceasefire. He's the Secretary of Defense. He used to be a general. When I was in the military, they had these things called campaign plans. And where's the campaign plan for all these weapons and all these billions to give to the cosplay general named Zelensky in Ukraine? And it just doesn't exist. So what are we giving these billions for? I feel like this is World War I all over again. This is just trench warfare. And if there's no campaign plan to get back to the old border, maybe the 2014 border, they're not going to get Crimea back. So then what are we doing? And then, okay, so let's sue for peace. Well, who's doing that? Where's that campaign plan? There's the thing called the DIME, diplomacy, information, military, economic.
Uh-oh.
The diplomacy, but you do by making the military and the
Are you driving by the CIA right now? Because your phone is suddenly skipping out. But listen, Richard, God bless you and thank you. And when you're in the military, I'm saluting you. You're absolutely right. Nobody, our Secretary of State is nowhere to be found with a peace plan or a Secretary of Defense. You're right, a former Army four-star general. No plan for peace whatsoever. Nobody's even talking about it. We just assume that war is endless. Now, I should point out, just told you about General Stanley McChrystal endorsing Kamala Harris. And as a result, he's now been invited to be their premier guest on Face the Nation day after tomorrow on Sunday. They're going to have General McChrystal on because he is a now retired four-star Army general who's endorsed Kamala Harris, not because he likes her, but because he is suffering from TDS. He's very anti-Trump. And Trump, sometimes has this effect on people with things that he says. He turns people off. A lot of people are voting against Trump, not so much for Kamala Harris. But I wish that General McChrystal had given this a little more thought. He could call into the show. I'd like to have a conversation with him about what he's thinking about doing. It might not be too late if he hasn't voted early. I bet he probably lives in Virginia. It wouldn't be at all surprising if he did. But what a terrible development. Face the Nation doesn't think it's a terrible development because they've invited him on. And they're going to just tee him up and say, well, why do you hate Trump so much, just like us? And you're going to vote for Kamala just like us. Explain why. Please explain why. Isn't that amazing? Yes, sir. I am telling you. Also, General McChrystal from Washington, D.C., went to school at St. John's College High School in Washington, D.C., just really about a little over a mile from this radio station where I sit right now, a Catholic high school. One of our best friend's daughters went there, and it's a very nice high school, St. John's College High School in Northwest Washington, D.C., and then on to an illustrious career in the military, and now to disgrace himself in this way. You know, again, Donald Trump is many things, but he's on our side. He's on our side. And that counts for a lot, an awful lot. And he's talking about ending the war. Maybe that's what has rankled General McChrystal. Hard to say, because the Democrats, you know, they ruin everything. They destroy everything. But the war will go on forever and ever, and we'll continue funding it. And we'll have policies that have to do with energy that enrich Vladimir Putin and Russia so they can continue to fund the war. And we have policies toward Iran that allow Iran to continue to fund the war against Israel. And the Democrat Party is a death machine because they're the left. And nobody has murdered more people in the history of humankind than the left. And it's only been about 107 years that their massacre has been underway, and it continues to this day. They destroy everything they touch. They are the third world on wheels. Maybe on tank treads. Now, speaking of the left imprisons their political enemies everywhere in the world. That's part of being a third world country, and that means being almost always being a left-wing country. Are there any right-wing third world countries? I don't think there are. They're all left-wing, and they become gulags, and they imprison their political enemies, and they assassinate and shoot their political enemies. That sound familiar because it sounds familiar to me. Eric Adams yesterday held a prayer. He's supposed to be in court today now that he's been charged with a number of crimes. And he says, I'm not guilty. I wasn't even there. I never even met the girl.
Despite our pleas, when the federal government did nothing as its broken immigration policies overloaded our shelter system with no relief, I put the people of New York before party and politics.
And he's pointing out, he's saying, listen, I came out against the Biden administration and their immigration policies that are wrecking New York City because of all the illegal aliens you guys are pouring in here. And then suddenly I was indicted by the FBI and the Biden Justice Department for discounted travel. Eric Adams.
Do you think it's political?
Well, I think we should ask again.
I think it's political.
We should ask those who are...
We know it's political.
New York, it's a little press conference with the mayor who's been charged with. It's the first ever mayor of New York to have been charged with crimes with felonies. That's kind of amazing and surprising given the number of Democrat mayors they've had. He's been charged with 5 counts. Count 1, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, federal program bribery. That's the name of a crime. And to receive campaign contributions by foreign nationals. Why would that be a problem? That's going to shock the Democrats. Count number 2, wire fraud. Counts number 3 and 4, solicitation of a contribution by a foreign national. He's got to be scratching his head and saying, when did that become illegal? Count number 5 is bribery, right? And so he's been charged with all these crimes, and he's looking at 40-something years in the penitentiary. Now, why did all this happen? Interestingly, a bunch of Black Lives Matter protesters showed up at his press conference yesterday, and they apparently, he's a former police officer. That might be enough all by itself.
Your policies are anti-black. You are a disgrace to all black people in this city. The things that you have done are unconscionable. You hurt our schools. Our streets are dirty. Our children are harassed by the police. This is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
You can shush me all you want, but the people
You can shush me.
us. And this is not a black thing. This is a justice thing.
Now, the mayor is
First
black.
of all, I want to thank you for being here.
Here's the mayor. Now, then the mayor. First of all, I want to thank you for being here. That's New York. That's Black Lives Matter, and it's not a black thing. It's a justice thing, and he's a former cop, New York, it's a hell of a town. The crime rate is up and the economy's down. The people live in a hole in the ground. New York. President Trump was asked about the indictment of the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, a Democrat, an African-American Democrat. Black Lives Matter, crazy later. It is political. And this is what the Democrats have done to our culture. They have secured cultural dominance, and this is what they've done. They're not on our side. President Trump says, hey, look, Eric Adams spoke up against the Biden administration's illegal alien policies, and boom, and it's true. President Trump says, and the moment he did, I predicted that he'd be indicted.
I don't know the mayor well, but I will say this. I watched about a year ago when he talked about how the illegal migrants are hurting our city and the federal government should pay us and we shouldn't have to take them. And I said, you know what? He'll be indicted within a year. And I was exactly right, because that's what we have. We have people that use the Justice Department and the FBI at levels that have never been seen before.
And it's true. We talked about this, too, when he came out against, and, we made jokes about it, and President Trump was talking about it. Now, Eric Adams should come out and endorse Trump now, shouldn't he? He should endorse Trump, the Democrat mayor of New York, African-American man should endorse Trump, and then Trump should let it sit for 2 days and then reject his endorsement. Because politics. Now, just for a refresher, in April of last year, 2023, when New York was being overrun by illegal aliens and gang members and Tren de Aragua, which we now call TDA because they become a Venezuelan gang, has become a part of our culture to the point where we have an abbreviation for them. They're TDA, Tren de Aragua. And Eric Adams came out last year, April of 2023, and said that he didn't like what he was seeing.
They watched me navigate 52,000 people coming into our city without one penny from the federal government.
And he's, hey, where's the federal government? I want money. So he's trying to shake down the Biden administration, the federal government. And also in April of last year.
Why isn't every elected official in Washington, D.C. asking the national government, why are you doing this to New York? The national government has turned its back on New York City.
Well,
and we have to ask that question.
TDA is all over the place. It's like a public display of affection, PDA, but it's different because it's a Venezuelan gang dragging women down streets and robbing and raping and murdering all over the place. And the news media, because it's an extension of the Democrat Party, an engorged appendage of the Democrat Party, they're not talking about it. But Eric Adams talked about it last April, and then, as President Trump predicted, he was indicted by the Biden Justice Department.
Instead of standing on the steps of City Hall, we should be standing on the steps of the White House and asking the national government, what are you doing to the city of New York? This is impacting our schools, public safety.
Yeah, you would think all the gangs and the criminals and the violence and the murders and the rapes and the looting and the organized crime and the drugs and the you see they've taken over areas where street prostitution is now in New York, now being run by TDA, Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang that the Democrat Party imported to the United States of America, Mayor Adams, in April of last year.
The President of the United States can give us the ability to allow people to work.
Joe Biden.
This is in the lap of the executive branch of the United States of America.
Yes, it is. Jonathan Turley is a law professor extraordinaire, a thinker, and a self-described lifelong Democrat, but he's intelligent enough where he's got to spend a lot of time shaking his head these days. And he was asked about the indictment yesterday by the Biden-Harris Justice Department of the Democrat mayor of New York, who's African-American. And Jonathan Turley was scratching his head a little bit.
There's certainly less than meets the eye once you begin to look at these charges. You know, they, for example, say that there was a quid pro quo where the mayor intervened to speed along a fire inspection approval process for a Turkish consulate.
Right.
But the mayor can say, look, that's what mayors do. You know, this is a city with a lot of diplomats, and we want to avoid diplomatic problems, including the arrival of the president of that country. So he has defenses to say there wasn't any quid pro quo here.
But the Justice Department is threatening to put him in prison for 40-something years because it looks like he went to Istanbul and somebody upgraded his ticket from coach to first class or business class or something. And maybe there's more, and maybe I wouldn't be at all surprised if he's crooked. He's a Democrat with power. And Jonathan Turley.
The most damaging is probably the allegations of solicitation of foreign contributions, but we have to see how much knowledge he had. That $100,000 are largely upgrades in hotels, which certainly don't make him look good.
And don't make him look good, but Jonathan Turley is like, there's no major smoking gun here, and the timing was rather coincidental. You cross the party, and the party uses the Justice Department to crush you like they've done with so many of their political enemies.
The biggest problem he's going to have is that the U.S. Attorney's Office was very aggressive yesterday and basically warned people around him, we will be indicting others, so you better cooperate. And they're trying to build a case with his associates because they know that those witnesses are very damaging in front of a jury.
Yeah, the left is here. The United States is on a downward trajectory because of corrupt political power players. And what do we call these people, Michael? Democrats is the correct answer. There are no Republicans doing anything like this anywhere in the United States of America. Save America. He may be an SOB, but he's our SOB. Senator Ron Johnson out of Wisconsin suggesting today that Joe Biden actually pushed Volodymyr Zelensky to go to war with Russia when Volodymyr Zelensky wanted to find a peace deal before the actual Putin invasion. But that the warmonger Joe Biden military-industrial complex, boy, I got to tell you, playing Sodom Napalm in the morning has impressed a lot of people. We're getting tweets about it and responses to the playing Sodom Napalm in the morning. Wonderful stuff. Thanks to Jasmine. Great stuff. Also, Israel is striking Lebanon today, and it looks like they've targeted the leader of Hezbollah, the Army of Allah, Hassan Nasrallah. And there are some funny headlines about that today, too. Israel, CNN headline, Israel concealed explosives inside batteries of pagers sold to Hezbollah, Lebanese officials say. Boy, nothing gets by you guys, huh? How do you get 400 years behind the rest of civilization? One idiot decision at a time. Okay, now, let's see. The children, CNN, went and spoke to children, 10-year-olds in schools in New Jersey and Texas. And they discovered that Democrat parents send their kids to school to politically polarize the CNN's video talking to kids.
What's the first word that pops into your head when you hear the name Kamala Harris?
Liar.
What's the first word that pops into your head when you hear Donald Trump?
Pure evil.
How much do you like Donald Trump using that scale?
Donald Trump probably hates me for doing this, so,
You really don't like Donald Trump?
I mean, come on, he went to, jail.
Trump went to jail. The kid calls Trump Hitler, and CNN declared that it was Democrats who politically polarized the classrooms in grade schools.
He's like Hitler. He only wanted to be president so that he can just control everybody.
Which one of these two candidates do you think is more likely to do bad things?
Oh, convicted felon against a liar. Oh.
Democrat Party talking points inflicted on the little kids. Got a caller here, Peter from Fredericksburg, who says he thinks that the General McChrystal just wants to get a big job, maybe defense secretary or something in a Democrat White House.